morning. All right, let's go ahead and begin our lesson for today. It's lesson 38, and we're going to be on page 117 in your reader book. So turn to page 117. There's only 3 pages today that we're going to be looking over, but there are 2 work text pages. Now, one of these I'm going to help you with, and one of them you're going to do on your own because it's a study guide, and I'm going to get a grade on it, okay? So you can go ahead and open your work text pages too, to page 50 and 51. All right, so let's think back to what we studied yesterday. Do you remember the name Christopher Sholes? Do you remember what he invented? The typewriter. Now, the name of that keyboard arrangement, what do we call that? The QWERTY keyboard, because of the way the letters are, it spells QWERTY. All right. What did Alexander Graham Bell invent? The telephone. Now, what was the problem with this phone? You had to scream if you wanted them to hear you. It didn't have good sound on the other end, did it? So, what did Thomas Edison invent? The phonograph and the light bulb. What did the phonograph do? It recorded the human voice and then it played it back. What about Jan Matzliger? He invented the shoe laster. Remember that? They could only last like 12 pairs of shoes a day when they did it by hand, but when he made his machine, it could do about 700 a day. So that was helpful, wasn't it? Let's look at page 117. There's a picture on the screen, and then there's the same picture there on your page, on page 117. This is a man named Cornelius Vanderbilt. Now, today we're actually going to be reading about 2 men that we've already read about. We're going to be reading a little bit more about John D. Rockefeller and Andrew Carnegie. You're going to read a little bit more about them, and then some about Cornelius Vanderbilt, and then a little bit about something called capitalism. And this is actually something that's in the news today if you listen to the news. Now, I'd like for you to look at page 119. There is a dark black word up there. That word is capitalism. That's a kind of economic system. Capitalism is what we have here in America. Okay? So what I'd like for you to do today is I'd like for you to pause it, and I would like for you to read pages 117, 118, and 119. Okay? And as you read this, I want you to find out why capitalism is good. Okay? You'll figure it out as you read. All right? So I'd like for you to pause it. Make sure you read very well. Go to a quiet place if you have to, okay? And read it, and then come back, and we're going to go over a few questions. Did you finish reading? I hope you did. All right. So how did each of those men, Carnegie, Rockefeller, and Vanderbilt, how did they all get their wealth? Carnegie from steel, Rockefeller from oil, and Vanderbilt from railroad and shipping. What were some of the qualities that these men had that would allow them to do so well? They worked hard. They were hard workers. They were smart with their money, and they knew how to help people. They loved to help people, and that is important. How did Andrew Carnegie help education? He had a lot of libraries built, and he gave a lot of money to schools and stuff. He also helped churches by doing what? He bought organs for them to play their music and stuff on. They gave away lots of money. Rockefeller gave a lot of his money to schools and medical research. Now, you read about something called rags to riches. Do you know what that term means? Rags to riches means someone who's very poor. They're just wearing rags. And then overnight, something happens and they become wealthy, and they've got riches now. So from rags to riches means very quickly they went from being very poor to being very wealthy. So, all right. So you read about capitalism. So let me ask you a couple of questions about that. For what reasons did some people think the millionaires were not good? They gave away so much money, but some people didn't think they were good. Thought that they weren't good to their workers, that they used people to get to the top. How could having too much money be a bad thing? Having too much money can make you more greedy. Sometimes, but not always. Do you think if you run a business to help others, or if you run a business for your own selfishness, which one of those is a good reason to run a business? To help others. If you run it for your own selfish purposes, you're being greedy. And then you can say, oh, I don't know about this guy. Is it wrong to overwork your workers? Of course it is. That's even a silly question, isn't it? So with capitalism, that's an economic system. That's a system in which a people, a government, does their money and their businesses. And in capitalism, you can do whatever you want to do. You can open a business, or you can shop somewhere. You can buy over here, you can buy over there. You can lower your prices, you can make your prices higher. You can do whatever you want to do. That's what capitalism does. All of the business and the money is owned by the people, not by the government. There's a lot of countries around the world right now where the government owns the businesses and they own the money, and they only give the people certain amounts of things at certain times. One of my daughters just got back from a mission trip to Cuba, and Cuba is an island. It's a country on an island just south of Florida, and they have a communist government there, and the government there owns everything. The people live in poor. They're very poor. They live in just poor things. And for food, the government gives them a certain amount of rice. I think they get 2 eggs a month per person. They don't get any beef or anything like that. I think sometimes they get pork. I think it was, or maybe chicken, but they only get a little bit. And they get a certain amount of beans, and that's all they get. And the government tells them what they can't just run up to Brookshire's and get a gallon of milk and a loaf of bread. They can't do that. And because the government owns it. That's not capitalism. So capitalism is like, here, I think I'm going to run up to Brookshire's and get some peanut butter. But you know, I think it's cheaper at Walmart, so I'm just going to go to Walmart and get it. That is capitalism. Okay? And so that's a good thing. All right, let's look at our work text, page 50. All right. Now at the top, there are trains, steel beams, and then oil cans. All right? So on 1 through 5, we're going to read the statement. If it applies to Vanderbilt, we're going to circle the train. If it applies to Carnegie, we're going to circle the beam. And if it applies to Rockefeller, we're going to circle the oil can. Okay? All right, number 1. Earned a fortune in the steel business. That's Carnegie, so you'll circle the steel beam. That kind of gave you the answer, didn't it? Number 2. Became rich through the railroad and through shipping. That would be the railroad. That would be Vanderbilt. That gave you the answer too. Number 3. Earned his wealth in the oil industry. That would be Rockefeller, so you'll circle the oil can. Number 4. Gave much of his money to build libraries. That would be Carnegie, so you'll circle the steel beam. And number 5, gave much of his money to medical research. That would be Rockefeller, so you'll circle the oil can. All right. Underneath that, it says, explain how capitalism works. Okay, so what you would do is you're going to write on page 119 in your book, where it on the second paragraph where it says Americans were learning how capitalism works, that the next sentence, in a system of capitalism, where it says the government does not own a country's goods and businesses, the people do. Okay, that's what you're going to write where capitalism works. Okay, you can also put that people are free to start their own business. In places like Cuba, you can't do that. So capitalism is where you can go anywhere, do anything. The people own the businesses, not the government. So you'll write something like that there. Okay. Now, I'd like for you to answer the next one. Explain what God expects people to do, whether they have money or not. Just put an answer there. Just one sentence is fine. And I don't need to see it. That's just for you. But I do want to see the study guide on page 51. And make sure it's going to be pages 108 to 119 that we've just been reading in this chapter. So I'd like to grade this page. It'll be worth 12 points. Okay? All right. That's all for today.